So one of the most important things about tents is making sure that it doesn't come down, that you install it correctly and it stays up. One of the key factors in that is stakes. Now there's many styles to stakes and different sizes. I started out with this stake, a 30-inch stake. I started out with this stake and this was the cheapest big stake I could get. There were shorter ones, 24 and 18 inches, but I figured 30 inches at least looks pretty big. And this works in a lot of situations, but it is not the best. Like if you're just putting up a 20 by 20, 20 by 30, 20 by 40, this will generally work. But over the first few years of me using this 30-inch stake, I had way too many issues where it would pull, the tent would loosen up. I'd get a phone call and have to go out and fix it. I had to keep a sledgehammer in my vehicle at all times for when a customer called and said, this tent's coming down or this tent's loose or these stakes pulled. Then I had to go out and reinstall the stake. Well, at this point I started making more money and was like, I'm just gonna buy bigger stakes. So I went up to this. This is a 40 to 42 inch stake. Much, much larger. So because it is so much larger, there's obviously more holding power. Once I started using this stake, the amount of phone calls that came in drastically decreased. I still had some, but this stake holds way better. And we'll get into this later, but then as more and more time went on, I started using what you call a double yoke ratchet. So two of these big stakes could be used on one ratchet to double the holding power. And then we'll get into this. Then I started using stake bars so you could triple your holding power. Now another thing to note is the heads of the stakes. There's what you call double-headed and single-headed. I don't have any single-headed to show you because I just don't buy them. So what is this about? Why would you even have that? Well, you need a stake cap to go on things. This is for safety. Well, number one, you need your ratchet to go on. So you put your stake through whatever kind of ratchet you're using, and this head stops it from going up. Number two, you need a cap for safety. So this first head right here will stop your ratchet from going up and just knocking this off. If this was not here, this stake cap could not go on. It could go on, but every cap you'd have to cut out a shape. So when you put it on the top of the stake, the ratchet could fit through that hole. This double head makes it so any ratchet you're using stops here, and then you can put your cap on. Also, once you take your cap off and you're using some sort of stake puller, you want room to grab. If this was all the way up, you don't have any room to grab anything. So this gives you space when you're using some sort of stake puller. Now this isn't really that important, but there are different sizes to heads. I personally like this better. There's more room right here than this, but it's still the same size stake. It's still got the same holding power. So switching to one of these larger stakes has been one of the more beneficial decisions I've made. Like I said before, I was using the 30-inch stake and it did fine, especially for smaller tents. But once you started doing bigger tents, 30 wide and 40 wide, it wasn't doing as good. I'd get a lot of phone calls, I'd get a lot of scares. And I'm big on efficiency and not wasting time. Well, I was wasting a lot of time taking those phone calls, going out and fixing the problem. So if I bought the bigger stakes and I cut down on that issue, it was gonna save me time, save me money, save me headaches. And it did. As soon as I started putting those bigger stakes in for every tent install, calls drastically dropped. I wasn't having scares, I wasn't having to drive out places. And then once I started using the double yoke ratchets or the 3-hole stake bar, I don't get phone calls at all anymore. Unless there's a huge, massive storm, none of my tents, even the biggest tents, loosen up or stakes pull anymore because I've doubled to tripled the holding power of them. So I know you don't have a lot of money to begin with. You're starting on a shoestring budget, but I do suggest getting 40 to 42 inch stakes. Number one, you put a lot of money into these tents. You want them to stay up. You want them to be one piece. Number two, you don't want to waste your time driving out and fixing things. So if you get the right stakes to begin with, all that's out the window. You don't have to worry about that. Your tents are gonna stay up, they're not gonna come down and get destroyed, and you're not gonna have to waste your time going out and fixing tents. So get 40 to 42 inch stakes. It's going to greatly benefit you. You're gonna skip the entire multi-year phase of having to go fix tents. You're not gonna even know that struggle because I'm telling you now, get the bigger stakes. If someone fell on this, they're gonna get seriously hurt. That's what these are. These are stake caps. I buy all white so it looks nice, but there's orange and green ones as well. But if you're gonna do any sort of nice event, just get the white ones. Inside of them are these kind of like little teeth that just helps hold on to the steak. You have your tent up, your steaks are installed. All you do is put that on top of it. Makes it look a little cleaner, but more importantly, it makes it safer. Now, if someone were to trip and to fall on this, it's gonna hurt, but it's not gonna hurt as much as falling onto that. I only ever had one scare where someone told me that they fell on a steak, and this was in the beginning of my tent career. I didn't own steak caps. I just did the steaks as is. Well, we were doing a graduation party. I knew the person though. Her husband got really drunk, tripped, and hit his sternum on a steak. He had to be rushed to the hospital. Again, fortunately, I knew them, so they didn't try to sue me or anything. Her husband was hurt, but she also was like, my husband was drunk. It wasn't really your fault. But anyone else, they may have seen that as an opportunity to get a whole bunch of money from me. So immediately after that, I bought tent stakes. Like I said, someone falls on this, it's still gonna hurt, but way less than a steak. Protect yourself. These are only about $1 each. Steak storage. Steak storage is gonna be an important thing. You're gonna have a lot of steaks. Now, you wanna be able to get them on and off the truck easily. You want them to be organized. So let me show you what I do, and let me show you some various options. The number one thing that I do is I find 30-gallon container things, and you cut off the inside top. You don't cut off the whole thing, because then there's no structure and it's going to like bend. You gotta cut off the inside, and then you got a nice thing to put your steaks in. Second thing is I bought these green carts to move them around. We usually actually ratchet them down to it, like a ratchet here. The hook goes down around in there, and we'll do 4 of them on there. And I didn't buy enough of these, I was just testing them out. So we also have these carts that are made to move barrels. Now the 30-gallon barrels are like a great ideal size, but they're kind of harder to find. So you can use the 55-gallon barrels. Like right there, there's a 30-gallon barrel on one of those green wheel cart things. Right here is a 55-gallon cart. It does not fit on that, so it would need to be moved with one of the barrel carts. And then randomly, I came across a metal barrel, works just as well. So all my steaks are in barrels that can be moved somehow, because you may go pick up tents on Monday and completely fill your barrels, and then Tuesday you gotta go back out and pick up more, and you're gonna have more. So you need to get those steaks off the truck. So what we'll do is we'll bring an empty barrel over to the truck and hand transfer them over. Then on our trucks, the barrels are ratcheted to the walls. We always have 2 barrels on the trucks, because basically a full day's worth of steaks is 2 barrels, not just 1. So I just said that we like to hand transfer it over. You could undo the ratchet, put the barrel cart under it and take it off, but generally like the liftgate loading dock thing, the wheels on those barrel carts are small, hard wheels. It's just kind of a pain. So I just like hand transferring them over. Now, other ways I've seen people do it is they actually build out like a thing out of 2x4s and plywood. It's against their wall, it's in a corner, and that's where all the steaks are, standing up. Or they do the same thing, but all the steaks are laying down. I don't like either of those, because that means you have to go over to the steaks, carry a few at a time on and off the trucks. I like the barrels because they can just be moved where they need to be. Alternatively, you could take a pallet and build something on there, so you can use a pallet jack and move them to and from the truck. Or there's these stacking things. This one right here is just a regular rectangle stack thing. I don't know what you call them, but you get the idea. They can stack on top of each other. So if you have a forklift, you can stack them higher. If you've just got a pallet jack, you can stack them, put them next to each other, and use the pallet jack to move them around the warehouse. Now the problem with those ones is the steaks don't lie flat. Because of the heads on the steaks, once you start putting them down, they start to go up like this on one side. And then they start to kind of fall out of that thing. So Tent Ox, which you'll learn about Tent Ox in a little bit, but they made exactly the same thing, but it has a cover in the front so that doesn't happen. The steaks will start to go like this, but they're not gonna slip because they're hitting that cover in the front. Now I like both of those options because you can move them around the warehouse easily.
And we've recently been thinking about getting the tent ox one and stacking it too high in the truck. Because right now, when we're getting steaks, you need to be up in the truck to, reach up and get these. We're down on the ground, you need to reach up and grab these. Well, you can't actually. Someone needs to get them out and put them at the end of the truck. With the tent ox ones, where two are gonna be stacked on top of each other, ratcheted to the wall, you no longer need to get up in the truck. You can easily just pull them off and go. So I'm thinking about doing that with one of the trucks next year. Now, what do you do on site with the steaks? Now you need to get from your truck to the tent location. Well, you can do that a whole bunch of different ways. You can stack a bunch on one of these carts. You can stack a bunch on if you have an electric cart. If you've got everything on these wheels or you got these barrel carts, you could drop the entire thing down on the ground so it's easier to get to, and then just carry it by hand or by cart. If you got everything built on a pallet, you could drop it down with the pallet rack down, or you can just carry it by hand. We carry 4 in each hand, so 8 each trip. It's not too crazy. So that's storing your steaks. Slipping steaks. Now what does that mean? That means you got steaks coming out of the ground on your tents. The ground conditions are not favorable. It might be too wet, the soil might be too loose, and you've got steaks just kind of coming up. You got a few options. Number one is using steak bars. That's your best option, transforming the power of 1 steak into 3 steaks. But you might not have them with you. You may only have enough steak bars to do your big tents. And say it's Friday, you're setting up your 20 wide tents, and you don't have any steak bars on the truck. So the next thing to do is just put a whole bunch of steaks, like 3 steaks around with 3 ratchets, but that looks messy. So this is what we do, and this works about 90% of the time. We take the slipping steak and we hammer it back in like normal, and we take another steak and put it at a slight angle to it so it's touching, and we put them in together, just like this. This one steak was slipping, we added another steak to it, and then we put the ratchet around both of them. And that, like I said, about 90% of the time, keeps the steaks from slipping. They stay right there. Now there's enough holding power. Now, if that doesn't work, then we do that and we add another steak with another ratchet. And if that doesn't work, then we add a second steak to that new steak. So we got 2 steaks that are touching each other, and then that will usually work. So that's how you handle slipping steaks. I believe most of you guys are not even gonna have steak bars yet. Most of you are gonna be starting small. So this is the way most of you are gonna solve the problem, by using 2 steaks together and then putting the ratchet around both of them.